Hello, everyone. My name is Rusty Ford. You may have seen some of my videos on suicide prevention. I only have about six up at this at the present time, but I have over 30 more that I plan to put up in the next couple of months. So in the description of this video, you will find a link to the playlist where you could see the other topics I talk to or talk about when it comes to suicide prevention. Everything from should you tell a child when about a family member who has ended their lives with suicide to actual prevention things, when to call 911 if it's appropriate, and how to talk to somebody when you call 911. Various videos that can be helpful to most people. Some of them will be specifically with this, as somebody who works with suicide prevention in mind. Today's is really geared toward a family member. Uh, I mean, it's one of the scariest things that you can ever experience is to have, somebody you love and care about tell you that they want to end their life. Now, uh, in a couple of weeks, I'm going to have a video up about how to talk to somebody and ask them if they are thinking about suicide. But, at times people get, you know, almost everybody who's suicidal gets signals. They make suggestions to people that they just miss. But, it can't ever be easy. I know I have a daughter uh, who many years ago, when she was a young teenager, uh, was suicidal, and she came and told me she was suicidal. And so this was you know something that I've had first person experience with. But I want you to think about something. As shocking as it is for somebody that you know and care about, whether it's a family member or a friend, when they tell you that they're thinking about suicide, that they're thinking about ending their life, in a sense, they are offering you a gift. I know it doesn't sound like a gift, but they're inviting you into their lives and into their pain. They're crying for help. And what you say at this point will either open the door uh, so that they'll let you in further, or shut it completely. And I don't mean this in a judgmental way. I don't mean this in uh, you know anything except that you know when somebody feels rejected when they respond and share something this deep and personal to them, then they tend to shut the door. I mean, not that they'll shut the door on you, they just won't bring the subject or anything like it up again. And it's a gift in that now you have the opportunity to listen, to enter in their life, to share with your love with them, share your care with them, and help them work to a path of healing and wholeness in their life. But this is a critical moment because they've just shared with you something they're scared to death to share. I mean, they don't know how you're going to respond. You and this is a hard thing. So being um, careful with what you say at this point is very important. It will be much easier for you once you've watched this video because you'll have some idea of what not to say, and we'll make some hints about what to say. Later in the week, I'm putting up a video on what to say in a situation such as this. But when somebody shares with you, I'm thinking about ending my life, there's two responses that typically most people have, one or the other: fight or flight. Um, you know, um, and fight means that you're going to stay in there and that you want to be there for the person. Flight is, this subject is too sensitive, I'm too scared to talk about it, and so you don't. But one of the problems with the fight is we don't want to believe it, we don't want to accept it, we don't know what to do with it, and we're not going to run away. you know, um, and we're not going to say, oh, you just don't mean it, and walk away. But the problem is a knee-jerk response. Because the first thing that comes to your mind as you don't want them to do this. The first thing you feel is deep fear. I mean, when my daughter told me she was thinking about ending her life, I mean, it's just like my heart stopped. What do I do? And I don't remember, you know, uh, almost 20 years ago to what I said, at that moment. But we did talk and talk about her feelings and why she was feeling that way and what we could do to help. And we did find her a counselor, um, and and work through the things that she was doing, and she's living a full and happy life now, and that's the goal in the situation. But since you're so afraid, one of the uh, knee-jerk responses is to say the first thing that comes to your mind, and that's usually something like, you know, you can't possibly be thinking this. You don't mean it. You don't really want to die. And there's so many, and so I'm going to give you 12 common responses that are just natural. It's the first things that we want to say, um, and none of them, you know, um, are mean. None of them have anything. I mean, all of them have one thing in common. You know, it's it's something that pops out of your mind that you're hoping will help them. But after watching this video, you'll understand more about what they need and what they don't need. The first knee jerk response that happens, and this is what gets said, I believe, more times, is you don't really mean that. Well, I'm telling you right here, if they tell you they're thinking about suicide, they mean it. And it's our job to take them seriously, because if we just, oh, you don't really mean that, and walk off, you, that just makes their situation worse. Uh, Now, our brains might not be able to handle it, but if you know anybody that's suffering depression or anxiety issues, or are going through some very difficult times, you just may hear these words come to you. The second half, that uh, this one, number one, is usually in two parts. You don't mean it. You don't really want to die. And uh, the truth is that studies have shown that most people who are suicidal don't want to die. I mean, there have been many studies done of people who have attempted suicide, and they all show that, all in all, they did not want to die, but wanted to end the intense emotional and physical pain that they feel, and they could not see any other way to do it. And so you always, anytime anybody suggests suicide, you take it serious. Yeah, you bring in people to help you. I mean, you may not be trained, you may not know what to do, but to say, I'm, this, something like this is difficult to hear. My heart is hurting that you're hurting so bad. I knew you were hurting, but I didn't expect that you were hurting this bad. How can I help? But to tell them you don't really want to die does not help. It ignores their feelings. It says, oh, what you just shared to me is not important. And this is one of the most important topics that somebody can share with you. I mean, we're talking about their life and their death, and we have an opportunity to help save their life and help it to be a meaningful and fulfilled life. And so, while in your denial, in your shock, your first thought is, oh, they can't possibly mean that, or they don't really want to die, you push that aside and assume that they are telling you the truth, and this is what they want. Um, and so you move from there into, how can we help? What can be done to help you live a full and happy life? What can I do to be there for you? The second one is suicide is selfish. Now, those of you who've watched some of my videos probably know that I suffer depression and anxiety, and I suffered it severely for many years until I started working on mental health recovery, which radically turned my life around. But during those times, I was suicidal during part of it, but most of it, I was ambivalent. I just didn't care if I lived. My dad, who was one of the most loving people I've ever known, you know, made some of these statements, to me. And one of them, he said, suicide is about the most selfish thing you can do. And while this may be true, uh, it inspires more guilt. It doesn't make them feel better. And there's three reasons why this is not a healthy thing to say. First, many people who seriously consider suicide actually think they are a burden to their family and that by staying alive, they're causing them pain. And so they think that they are being unselfish in this act. I'm trying to release you of a burden. Because of the pain or the mental illness or the combination, they're not able to think suicide and actually think that suicide is not an unselfish act. Second, virtually everything that we do, me and you included, are based on selfishness. Our first response in everything isn't what is best for the other person. We live in uh, a hedonistic society. Everybody thinks of themselves. Very few people spend hardly any time thinking about anyone else. We live in a selfish society. And so for us to look at them and say, oh, you're just being selfish, doesn't really make sense. The third is, isn't it a natural response to excruciating pain to think of escaping the torment? If a car's coming, if you're crossing in a crosswalk and a car's coming down and it doesn't look like they're going to hit their brakes, you try to get out of the way. You, uh, you, Most of us will do anything that we can to avoid pain and suffering. We take medications, we get surgeries, we go to great extents to end our pain. Well, this is what somebody who is struggling emotionally and then thinking about suicide is facing. They have pain that probably is beyond what you can even begin to imagine. One of the things we talk about frequently in our support groups that I lead is that you should never ever, if you suffer depression and anxiety, feel let down because somebody doesn't understand what you're going through, simply because unless they've been in your shoes, unless they suffer this type of torment, there's no way they can possibly understand. And so, before you say suicide is selfish to somebody, uh, you take a moment to think that they may be in emotional pain beyond what you can even begin to imagine. Because suicide, depression and anxiety issues not only cause mental distress, but they can cause extreme physical pain as well. And so to live every moment in your life in emotional and physical pain, um, it wasn't until that I had that amount of pain that I began to understand why somebody would want to end their life. Once I was in their shoes and living that pain, I began to understand. Now, suicide is selfish can uh, be something that comes up later on in your discussions with a person about their life, as many of these things are. You and as they begin to look, then you can point out that you know as they begin to understand that people are you know, love them and care for them, you know, and they start on a road of healing. But just to look at them the first time they say this, it's not a very helpful thing. Another thing that I hear a lot, and I heard myself a lot, is your life's not that bad. Well, just because you don't see the pain does not make it less overwhelming to the person who's feeling it. It can greatly help a suicidal person to feel understood. Dismissing their pain only pushes them away from you and maybe even make them more suicidal. They just opened up to you and they need you to understand and listen and not be in judgment, not be judgmental. You know, it's, you know, uh, it's hard for us to see the pain. Nobody understood the amount of pain that I felt. I mean, and I didn't even have words to be able to describe it to them. My wife was there for me the whole time. We're heading toward our 50th, I mean, our 43rd anniversary next in 2 days, actually. Uh, but while she didn't understand the pain, she didn't dismiss the emotional pain that I had. And so, you know, we're not, it's impossible for us to judge just how bad somebody's life is and just how much pain they're feeling. So when they, say they're thinking of ending their life, it doesn't help to say, oh, your life's not that bad. Another thing, which is probably one of the most true things you could say, but it's not helpful. I would really be hurt if you killed yourself. How could you possibly think of hurting me like that? And you may feel just like this, but the simple question pops up: when did this become about you? This person sharing their hurt, and when they come to you and they share their hurt, it's about them. And trying to make them feel guilty, even if that's not your intent. How could you do this to me? Is just laying a guilt trip on them, and will most likely make them feel worse than better. That's another thing that, you know, if they share with you and you talk to them, and now this is your third or fourth conversation, you know, um, and something in the conversation, nobody loves me. Well, it appropriate says, well, I really do, and I really care, and I really would be hurt if you ended your life. You know, uh, Uh, and so this can be appropriate part of the conversation later on, but it's just not one of the things that could be healthy in any way when they first bring the subject up. Number six, suicide is cowardly. This type of judgment just shows no understanding of the incredible pain somebody's feeling. And the truth is, suicide is neither brave nor is it cowardly. In fact, if you could understand the intense level of pain they feel, you might understand that it's taken a ton of courage and a ton of determination to make it this far. And that if they didn't have determination, and if they didn't have courage to face these problems, they may have ended their life 3, 6 months ago, a year ago, 3 years ago, 6 years ago. I mean, I've talked about to people who've been suicidal for most of their life. You know, uh, and I don't think suicide is any way cowardly, but I don't think it's brave in any way either. But just to look at them, my dad said this to me often, and I knew he meant well. And one thing I knew is that my dad loved me uh, as much as any father could ever love a son. And so, I did not take this the wrong way, uh, but you know, um, a lot of people will. You know, and so you know, in fact, to give a description, uh, suicide is no more cowardly than crawling under a desk when there's an active shooter in the building. You know, it's no more cowardly than running away from an explosion. You know, um, our natural response is to do anything that we can to end the pain. And you would not say someone was a coward in either one of those situations. You wouldn't say someone was a coward because he didn't run toward a guy who was shooting a gun. You, and suicide is no different. I mean, they're in pain and they're looking for a way out. And and suicide sounds like a way to end the pain. And making a judgmental statement doesn't help. Stopping and listening, to them and getting more involved in their life, and you know, is a way to help them keep the courage. Because I do believe, as from my own experience, I was in so much emotional pain, and year after year, and I fought to stay alive. I fought to stay alive for my family. You know, uh, and it was not easy staying alive when I had that much pain. You know, and so I look back and say, I was acting brave, but bravery can only carry you so far. and there has to be a breakthrough at some time, and you can be part of that breakthrough. So it's not really a healthy thing to say suicide is cowardly. Another one that can be beneficial in later conversations is you have so much to live for. You know, in fact, this one I don't think is that damaging, but most people who are suicidal do not think or able or are even able to comprehend that they have much to live for. And when you haven't been in their shoes and you don't understand the pain, uh, you know, this sounds like a wonderful thing to say. And under some circumstances, it may be helpful to remind the person of the many things that they have to live for. And even in the um, uh, later part of initial conversation, somebody says, I'm thinking about ending my life, and you begin talking about that. You ask them why they're, why they're feeling that way. You know, asking them about their pain and the causes of their pain and how they feel. As that conversation comes goes along, helping them to see some of the things they had to live for um, can be a very helpful thing. In fact, in suicide intervention, that is, if somebody comes up to me and or I ask them, "Are you thinking about suicide?" and they say yes, and I ask them, do they have a plan? Uh, when are they thinking about doing this right away? Part of the intervention is to get them to the point that we help them find that there are things for them to live for. But I never start the conversation out that way. Oh, so you are suicidal. Don't you know you've got so much to live for? No, we work this into the conversation uh, you know, after we get past some of the more critical issues. Number 8, which is a thing that is commonly said, and said with, as all the rest of them, said with good intent, things could be worse. Well, it is true. In almost any situation, you, uh, you no matter how bad it is, there are things that can happen that could make the make the uh, situation worse. But it doesn't really provide comfort to those who are suicidal. Uh, Put yourself in the suicidal person's shoes. They're in more emotional and physical pain than they feel they can endure. That's why they're suicidal. And by telling them, oh, tomorrow it may be worse, doesn't encourage them at all. You know, uh, they need to understand that tomorrow things could be better. And so things could be worse only reinforces in their minds that things are horrible. And that not only horrible, I don't feel like living today, but tomorrow it could be even worse. That does not help somebody not end their life in suicide. You know, it's just, it's as true as it could be, it's still not helpful. Uh, Suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Well, another true statement. You know, and some that, again, in later conversations can be very helpful for them to understand that, you know, that this is, a permanent solution to a temporary problem, but there's two big problems with it. Number one is it suggests that suicide can be a solution. And we never want to suggest that suicide can be a solution. We don't want to reinforce that in somebody's mind in any way. And the other thing, it suggests to the person that their problems are only temporary. And this is hardly helpful for those who have suffered for years. They don't see anything very temporary about their problems. Uh, if somebody just says something really traumatic that comes up and they haven't been suffering depression and anxiety or mental health issues, and this sudden pain, it's easier for them to understand that this can be temporary, but not to the person who has suffered for many years. Number 10, um, you will go to hell if you die by suicide. Uh, the truth is that many people never end their life because they're afraid that they will go to hell uh, if they end their life with suicide. Some churches, you know, uh, believe that since you can't repent, then you can't go to heaven if you end your life in suicide. Interesting thing is, we don't have any real reason for believing this. There's nothing in Scripture that says that various people who ended their life in suicide were going to hell. You know, uh, People argue, well, it's self-murder and murder is a sin. Well, there's a lot of things that are sin. There's a lot of things that are against God's will, and just because you've done them doesn't mean that you don't get to go to heaven. And the biggest problem with this is it presumes that God does not understand mental illness and cannot forgive something that somebody has no mental capacity to understand. It also assumes that the person believes in hell and that they would be worse off than the current pain they feel. And so, and again, you know, it's just a judgmental statement, and judgmental statements at this point um, aren't helpful. If over time they built this theology in and of themselves, it could very well save their life. But when they come to you, you know, they're saying, I need help. And you're saying, no, you don't. You're just a disgusting sinner. That's what they hear. It's not what you mean. And I know it's not what you mean. I don't believe anybody listening to this is going to say something intentionally mean if a friend or a family member says that they want to die. It's a difference between what we mean and what they hear. You know, they're needing a sense of hope, and you know they don't need to be told, some type of theological platitude. Uh, I mean, it's like, uh, all things work together for good. It's not, you know, for those who love God. When a friend dies, that's, you know, wonderful, true statement, but it's not helpful at that many time. Number 11, which is a very common one as well. I hope you're not planning on doing anything stupid. Or another version of it is, uh, are you thinking about hurting yourself? Well, neither one of these things in their mind is true. The odds are, if they're suffering so much pain that they're thinking about ending their life, suicide does not seem stupid. You know, to them, continuing to live in the extreme physical and emotional pain that they're experiencing, that's stupid. And so instead of saying suicide stupid, it's better at this point to try and help them find a solution to the pain that they're in instead of saying it's stupid. And when it comes to, uh, you know, the other side of the coin, are you thinking about hurting yourself? Well, if you understood just the amount of emotional pain, they're not thinking in that context. They're thinking of, if they end their life, they'll no longer have the pain. So it's not helping them when you say, are you thinking of hurting yourself? Because their answer would almost always, no, I'm not thinking about hurting myself. I'm thinking about ending my life. They see it as two separate things. We may not, but they do. And the last one, if you don't stop talking this way, I'm calling 911. And using this one is guaranteed to make them clam up and never open up and never be open to talking to you again about how they feel. Threats never open the door to a healing conversation. The truth is, you may have to call 911. I have a whole video on when it's appropriate to call 911 and what to say uh, during that call to help somebody get the help they need. Uh, but I have never used this as a threat, though I'm always ready. If that person is thinking about ending their life and thinking about ending their life at this moment, or they're going to leave here and go and end their life, You know, I've got, bottle of pills in my purse and I'm going to go take them. You know, I my butcher knife is sitting out on my counter. I'm going to go home and cut my wrist. My gun is in my car, and when I leave here, I'm going to go someplace private and shoot myself. You need to call 911. You know, uh, if the person in the conversation, you're talking about how, and they say, I'm thinking about ending my life, and I really don't know what to do, and you don't know what to do, you can call 911 and ask if there's a mobile response, a crisis response team. You and you because I know many people who were suicidal that didn't want to be committed. They didn't want to be go to the hospital and spend a week, 3 weeks, or 6 weeks in the hospital with intense counseling and all the things that go through inpatient treatment. But I do not know of one that has looked back and say, I wish I hadn't done it. And some of them are ecstatic that was done because it gave them their life back, because they didn't know what to do and they didn't have uh, insurance that would let them see a counselor, and they couldn't afford a counselor. So this inpatient treatment, you know, gave them the tools and the resources they need to live their life. Now, I mean, I'm going to stop it with that. I mean, there's 12 things, and these 12 are the most common things said. I mean, you can make a video that lasts forever of things not to say that have been said, but I hope you understand the tone and intent of the video. I'm not trying to make anyone feel bad. I'm just trying to help you have the tool so that if this happens, and hopefully it never does, you know, I mean, I think everybody, especially those who uh, know anybody that's suffering any type of mental illness, or whose life is in distress, will watch this video so they'll be better prepared to help somebody if they share that they're suicidal. But at the same time, I hope that nobody that watches this video will ever have to experience that. And that, as a parent, I hope you never have one of your children tell you they're thinking about ending their life. Um, it's not an easy thing, and it's still not an easy thing. In my suicide prevention training that I do, we have a video clip that we show of a mother finding out that her daughter's suicidal. And it's not unusual in one of my presentations for me to break into tears at that part of the video, because it sends me back to my daughter telling me that. And, you know, um, and it was scary. You know, because I had never worked in the field. I had never taken a class. I didn't know anything. I'm just hearing my daughter wants to end my life. And if I can't get her the help she needs, I may lose her. So I hope you never have to do that. But if you do, I'm glad you've watched this video. I hope you watch some of the others. Uh, you know, if you know anybody that you think may possibly be suicidal or move into being suicidal, I encourage you to take a formal class where you can learn all the things to look for and things to watch for and how to approach them and how to talk to them. And so, I have a link to my other videos in this. And if you want the transcript, if you want the notes for this, I also have a place in the description of this video where you can download this for free. If you want to sit back and think over it, you want to use it in a mental health support group or an SOS group, survivors of suicide group, I'm making this available. I mean, you can just download it for free. Well, I wish you all the best. I wish you a full life. It's the holiday season, so uh, I wish you a Merry Christmas. If you celebrate any other holiday during this time, I wish you that too. Whether it's I just went blank. Well, I get blank when I make a video because I get quite tired. Hanukkah or Kwanzaa is what I was trying to think of. Any other holiday during this period of time, um, then I wish you much happiness during it.